This is an illuminated Greek manuscript of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1. It records the genealogy of Jesus Christ, but it includes the deliberate insertion of two specific names, Rahab and Ruth. The presence of Ruth in the messianic royal line is a glaring historical anomaly. She was a foreigner, a Moabite widow. This map shows the border separating Israel from Moab. That physical boundary represented a cultural barrier rooted in centuries of ancestral hostility and blood feuds. The exclusion was codified in law. Deuteronomy 23 barred any Moabite from entering the assembly of Israel. In the honor-shame paradigm of the ancient Middle East, a childless foreign widow possessed no social capital. She had no legal standing, she had no protector, and no clear path to survival. This Moabite widow's story provides the mechanical blueprint for the theological concept of salvation. Theologians define this as typology. It occurs when a physical, historical reality in the Old Testament acts as the architectural schema for a spiritual truth in the New Testament. To understand the Christian gospel, we must first reverse engineer the agrarian legal machinery that allowed an excluded foreigner to enter the royal bloodline. In the Judean landscape, survival was tied directly to the earth. If you owned land, you lived. For a landless widow in this economy, the baseline reality was immediate starvation. Israel maintained a welfare provision to address this, recorded here in Leviticus 19, the law of gleaning. The poor were only allowed to pick up loose stalks dropped by the reapers. It ensured survival, but required constant manual labor. It took a grueling physical toll. Marginalized women working in foreign fields faced the daily danger of exploitation by those in power. Escaping this cycle of baseline survival required a specific cultural catalyst. The catalyst is defined by the Hebrew term hesed, translated as loving kindness or covenant loyalty. It transcends minimum legal obligations to protect the vulnerable. Ruth exhibits hesed by abandoning her homeland and her remaining safety to protect her destitute mother-in-law, Naomi. Boaz, the landowner, exhibits hesed by overextending his legal protection to Ruth while she gathers grain in his fields. Hesed is the necessary fuel that activates the heavy legal machinery of redemption. Beyond the gleaning laws, Israel had a higher-level provision designed to rescue families who had fallen out of the agrarian economy entirely. This diagram outlines the Goel, the Kinsman Redeemer law from Leviticus 25. To act as a Goel, a man must first be a near-blood relative to the impoverished family. Second, he must be able to redeem. He had to possess the independent wealth required to clear the family's debt in full. Third, he must be willing. The Kinsman Redeemer held the legal right to act, but the law did not force him to perform the redemption. Ruth's case required a double rescue. The Redeemer had to buy back the ancestral land and marry the widow to save the lineage from extinction. A legal transfer of this magnitude was executed at the ancient city gate, where 10 elders convened to act as binding legal witnesses. The transfer was finalized through a cultural mechanism. Exchanging a sandal served as the formal seal on the transfer of legal standing. Boaz officially steps forward. He fulfills all three criteria, pays the price, and claims the foreign widow. With the final exchange at the gate, Ruth moves from an excluded beggar to the enfranchised bride of the landowner. The New Testament writers present the gospel as the logical fulfillment of this ancient legal architecture. Humanity's default spiritual state mirrors Ruth's condition. We are impoverished, without an inheritance, and enslaved to a debt we cannot pay. This matrix maps the direct comparison between the historical event and the cosmic reality. The first requirement, a near kinsman, maps to the theology of the Incarnation. Galatians 4 explains that Christ takes on human flesh to meet the legal requirement of becoming our blood relative. The second requirement, being able to redeem, maps to Christ possessing the divine righteousness needed to bankrupt the debt of human sin. The third requirement, being willing, maps to Christ's voluntary sacrifice. As he states in John 10, he lays down his life by right of refusal. The cross is the ultimate transaction at the city gate. It is a legally binding double rescue that repurchases the physical earth and redeems the people on it. Look at the vastness of this land. The redemption Boaz secured for a single field foreshadows the promise of a physical creation brought back from decay and restored to its original inheritance. It elevates humanity from gleaning scraps in the dirt to sitting at the table of the King as his bride. Which brings us back to the illuminated Greek text of Matthew chapter 1. Ruth's inclusion establishes a precedent. The law of the Goel provided the mechanism for a foreigner to enter the messianic line through grace. The entire architecture of our salvation was initiated by Hesed. Those who are the beneficiaries of this legal rescue are obligated to practice that same legally transcendent loving kindness toward the vulnerable today. The Kinsman Redeemer reveals a God who secures his people through the precise execution of his own laws.